Good afternoon, Springfield. My name is Logan Cobbs, the assistant to the city manager, and I will be your host this afternoon. So today we have Springfield Police Chief Lee Graf with us today. Yay! And we have Lauren Kelley, who is the founder of Leaders of Change. So today we're going to be talking about community and policing, particularly in our current environment following the deaths of George Floyd and the shooting of Jacob Blake. So thank you all for joining us today. And thank you to Chief Graf and to Lauren for joining as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course. So Lauren, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and your interactions with the community.
So I am actually from Springfield, born and raised. I am the youngest of 5. My parents have been married for 42, going on 43 years, and raised in a Christian home, raised in Springfield City School, and just obviously this is home for me. So my involvement in the community has been in various ways, whether it be through church or through my job. I actually work for the Clark County Juvenile Court as a detention worker. So I've done a lot of things with our youth, also through a program called Project Jericho. And then, like I said, also in my church, and then I'm also a singer. So I've sung at different events here in Springfield. So
Are you gonna give us a snippet?
Not right now.
Okay. All right, very good. Well, Chief Graf, welcome back.
Thank you.
Very good. So I know you've had a lot of public service under your belt, both in the police division and in the military. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
You mentioned military. I did 6 years in the Marine Corps. I was an infantry person, so I did that, and I'm a Desert Storm combat vet, and then left there as a sergeant and came and applied for some law enforcement agencies in the Miami Valley, and was fortunate enough to get chosen by Springfield in 1996.
Okay.
And I've been policing mostly in uniform in either patrol or within the patrol realm my whole career. So for 26 years, I've been chief for almost 3 years now. It'll be 3 years in December.
That's awesome. Thank you for your service. So I'm kind of going to go back and forth between the two of you, asking you various questions. So
Sure.
Lauren, back to you.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about why you got involved with the city of Springfield and the communities, and what kind of inspires you.
So what inspires me is honestly my heart for people, the desire to see people treated equally, and also my desire to see our youth succeed. So in light of everything going on, starting with George Floyd, it definitely caused me to want to get involved even more. And I feel like it's never too late to start for anyone. People who want to get involved and want to help their community, want to help the city at large. I think now is the time. This is the perfect time to do it. So my desire to see people come together, unity, equality, inclusiveness, also just, us understanding one another, respecting each other. I would love to see that restored. And even though I believe Springfield is an awesome city to live in, and I'm thankful that we haven't had any major issues, we can always improve and just grow and get better.
Absolutely. Thank you for that response. I can feel your passion here. So I definitely appreciate that. Chief, back to you. So can you tell us a little bit more about what the impact of our current climate has had on the police division, and what you want the community to know about policing?
Well, I think that probably let's talk about the positive side of things that have happened. Just like what Lauren has said, is that a lot of people who might not normally have wanted to be involved or ask questions about policing or their government or anything like that have started to get involved. And
Absolutely.
a lot of it is younger people, which is essential, to community development in so many different ways. We just closed up an application period for police on Friday, and we don't have all the numbers in yet, but what I'm hoping is that we see a lot of young people and a lot of people from this community and a lot of diversity on this list. That's what I'm hoping for. This has started a lot of conversations
Sure.
between the community and police leadership between just citizens and police officers on the street. And one of the conversations that I've had a lot is I've been trying to get interest in this testing with young people is if there are issues or things you're dissatisfied about, now's the time to be the future
For sure.
and be the change. And one of the best ways to do that, if you're inclined, because this is not a job for everyone, but is to serve your community in uniform through policing, to kind of spread your ideas and your concepts, right out there on the street. And we have several, we have a lot, we have over 100 men and women who do that every day. On the other side of it, I think that with every incident in our nation that pains us, sometimes there's a tendency to perhaps react a little too harshly to the whole as opposed to the individual. I think it's been a very hard time for men and women in uniform and law enforcement, for a lot of the vilification that's gone on more as a profession as opposed to an individual act by individual officers. And so, of course, part of what I'm charged with is trying to keep the spirits of our men and women up every day. And part of that is just through making sure that we are doing the right thing and things like this, talking to the community and getting out and trying to get the word out. So it's what's going to happen with law enforcement. Obviously, there's going to be some more deep dives into looking at policies and looking at practices, and that's entirely appropriate and always has been. But I hope that it doesn't drive the youth of America away from the profession of law enforcement, because that's exactly what we need, is the youth of America coming into law enforcement, generation after generation of officer, to kind of keep our services going and keep them improving. So that's a lot. And as far as telling citizens about law enforcement, there's so much to say.
Sure.
And it's very hard to encompass law enforcement. And that's part of this discussion as well, is understanding what officers do every day and how they do what they do. That's kind of an ongoing process.
Absolutely. So you talked a lot about youth and our youth getting involved, and we're seeing younger leaders involved in the community. Lauren, talk to us a little bit about Leaders of Change, what it is, who it is, and I hear that you're scheduling a town hall. So talk to us about that as well.
So Leaders of Change is a foundation that I founded, and it's of a group of young people. Basically, we're all like-minded, have the same passion, and that is to see certain communities get better, and in particular, those of color. So with that, we want to see improvements by assisting different efforts for, education-wise and socially, economically. There's a lot of advancements that need to take place. So I started LOC for short for that reason. And yes, we do have a town hall that is scheduled for September 15th. It'll be at the Hollenbeck in the parking lot. All are invited. It is public, but we encourage social distancing. A mask is required. But the purpose of the town hall is to bring our leaders together. Those who, whether it be, I'm thankful that the chief was willing to sit down with us today, but the sheriff will be there, the city manager, you'll have the NAACP present, you will have county and city commissioners. So I'm thankful that, as the chief said, conversation needs to happen. Sure. Sometimes we shy away from it because it's uncomfortable, and to not talk about it and ignore it doesn't make it go away. So at some point we have to be willing to say, okay, this is how we need to address it. We can do it civilly, we can do it respectfully, but how do we move on from here? So I think it's a matter of maybe owning what has transpired in our nation, and then saying, okay, how can we better that? How do we improve? So that is my desire. That's what I want to see. Like I was saying earlier, I want to see that unity. And I felt like a conversation was a good start, because I can put in a lot of work in other areas, but if I really don't address the issue, we'll never get anywhere. And it's almost like putting a Band-Aid on,
Sure.
On an open wound. So that's what Leaders of Change is.
Awesome. So the town hall is taking place on September 15th.
Yes.
What time?
So it'll start, the food trucks will be out there at 4:00. The event actually starts at 5:00 and will go until 6:30. And we have, along with the flyers, an attachment that will include different topics that you can indicate what you would like to hear about. And then there's also a comment section. So if you have a question or a concern that you want to address, we'll be collecting that prior to. So each one of the panelists will already know what's going to be asked. And the reason why we're doing that is to just, gain control. We don't want the town hall to be out of control or anyone to basically take over. We only have a limited amount of time. So the moderator will be asking the questions. So if you want to submit a question, if you want to submit a comment, please do that prior to. And that's how it'll be answered.
All right, Lauren. So say, for instance, somebody in the community has a question about the town hall, about how to submit questions. Who should they contact?
So we have a Facebook page, which is Leaders of Change. We also have an Instagram page, which is at Leaders of Change Springfield. And also you can email us. So on the attachment, you will see where there are drop-off locations, one being the Dome, the other being our public library downtown, and the other being the LIE clothing store on Yellow Spring Street. So those are drop-off locations if you want to do it that way. But then also there is an email address if you want to email your comment, your question at leadersofchange@yahoo.com. So that's how you can get a hold of us.
And I believe that we might have the flyer up on the screen. At least we will momentarily for those to reference. But September 15th from 4 to 6, you can submit questions beforehand.
Yes.
And you can either send those through Instagram, Facebook, or email. And those will kind of prompt the discussions for that day.
And this is a positive call to action. This is what this town hall is going to be really focused on. We don't want any one group to feel targeted, but we definitely want certain things to be spoken on. As I said, it's good to hear our leaders speak on these matters because then it feels as though certain communities are heard and, that they care, that our leaders care. So this is a positive call to action. It's going to be, something that I feel we can move forward from here. It can be the start of many to come. It doesn't have to end with just this one because I think more conversations need to happen, and that's where change is going to take place.
That's awesome. Well, seems like an awesome event. So
thank you.
The flyer is up on the screen and you can forward all questions to Lauren.
Yes.
So Chief, back to you. So Lauren did talk briefly about a lot of the stories that we're hearing in national news, and this will be an opportunity for the community to kind of speak with our leaders about what we're seeing across the nation. So what are your just immediate reactions to some of the deaths that we're seeing?
Well, of course, this all initiated out of what happened in Minneapolis with Mr. Floyd. And every time that something like this happens on a national scale or a state scale, or even local things of controversy, I think that it's every agency that's involved. In this case, we're talking police, to kind of take a look in on themselves to see what their practices are, what their policies are, what their training is, and of course, from a recruitment and a vetting process, as much as we can, what's in the hearts and minds of individuals that we bring in to become law enforcement officers.
Absolutely.
For instance, there's been a lot of conversation nationally about, chokeholds and pressure on necks and things like that. Now, I can tell the public at home that I know from when I came on board in 1996, and it's been ongoing throughout, that we've always been trained that you don't do that you never do that. However, we still want to look at our policies and make sure that we're being clear about those things, that they're clearly defined and stated. And as you go forward, we just constantly want to continue to make sure that our eye is on items like what I would call the human relations or the humanity issues that law enforcement officers obviously have to be aware of. I mean, if you think about it, law enforcement officers, for the bulk of their day, in uniform patrol are involved with helping people.
Mhm.
They're going on calls. They're spread throughout the community. They respond to every call that comes in. Some are very low pressure, low tension type calls. Some are extremely high pressure, high tension, fast moving calls. But the key element in that is that it's officers going out there and trying to help people and deal with human beings. And so we certainly want people that are very well versed, officers that are very well versed in human relations
Mhm.
and in that belief in equality. I mean, one of the things that I emphasize to people that come in our building all the time, especially at swearing in ceremonies, if you've ever seen one, is our obligation to uphold the Constitution for all people. I'm much more concerned with the Bill of Rights and our making sure that every person, every individual that we serve, that we're protecting their rights and we're making sure that we're the guardians of those rights. Now we can go a lot of different directions with this, but I was appalled at what I saw in Minneapolis. That's a video that when I see it, I can't reason anything around why that would occur or why that would happen that makes logical sense to me.
Mhm.
Now, we've had other incidents since then, and I will have to say that having experience in doing this for 26 years and knowing what I know, um, we need to do a deep dive on these things and take a look at everything that was going on. It's very hard to look at a video and hear a few statements and have a true understanding of exactly what happened. So I would say on those that for citizens, they should be vigilant and make sure that the right thing is done and the right decisions are made. But they should also understand that it's very hard for us viewing something from far away to be 100% sure of everything that occurred. But yet at the same time, if there are things that need to be corrected, they absolutely need to be corrected.
Mhm.
So I suppose in saying that, it's making sure that this administration is open to engagement and our officers are open to engagement and talking about these situations, making sure we're making the right kind of corrections and we're making sure that we're on the right track on our policies and our training. But the biggest thing is just being open and engaged and watching and making sure we're doing the right thing every day.
Chief, I like some of those words that you used. You talk about engagement and community relations and equality and so many of those things that are important to you and important to the community. And I think that really speaks to you as a chief and the department as a whole. So I thank you for that. Lauren, talk to me a little bit about what you think can be done, if anything, to kind of bridge the gap between police officers and the community, ours in particular.
So I think it's important to understand that I believe respect needs to be restored on both ends. There's an understanding that we have to have concerning policing and what that looks like to the Black community. So as the chief mentioned, it is not everyone, right? Not everyone is a bad officer. And we're grateful that in Springfield, we have not had any major issues. We've been blessed. But I think we don't want to be a reactive community. We want to be a proactive community.
Absolutely.
So instead of waiting until something bad happens, let's get in front of it and say, okay, how can we prevent this? How can we come together? And one thing that I think we could benefit from is the Black community being aware of what the police already have in place. There are certain efforts that already take place throughout the year, but I don't think it is made known to the Black community. So it's one thing to have a presence. It's another thing to have a relationship. Relationship means you know me, you understand me, you respect me, right? So with that, in order for us to build relationship, that means the Black community and the police officers have to come together at some point, not just for, even if it's a special event, even if it's something set aside where, the officers go into the south end of town and say, hey, I want you to attend Safety City. I want you to go with me on this ride along. And I think that would help. I think mentoring would definitely help. The chief was talking about, creating diversity.
Sure.
That is important because I don't want to live in a community where there's no policing. We need policing. It's not the job itself, but it's those who abuse that authority. And I think that's where the carefulness has to come in order for young people to be interested and want to get involved. They want to feel like I'm going to be taken care of and you're going to understand me in this position. So I believe that that's where we can improve. There's a saying that says, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But I say, if it's not broke, improve it. That's where we can grow. We can say, okay, we're doing this right. So how do we build on that? Build on the foundation that we've already laid.
Absolutely. I like that idea of being proactive instead of reactive. So an opportunity, excuse me, to kind of have some conversations with our leaders, with our police chiefs, with our sheriffs, and with the rest of the community is a great opportunity.
And if I can add, I'm sorry,
Please.
I just want to add this. I am grateful for the chief, Chief Graf. He sat down with myself along with another young man on our team. His name is Henry. And first of all, I do want to thank Logan because she's a part of Leaders of Change as well. But he sat down with Henry and I, he and our city manager, and he just laid certain things out. He explained their take, he explained their side of things. And I think that's important. If I want to gain some kind of understanding and move forward, I have to be willing to sit down and talk to you and hear your side of things. I think sometimes we say, this is what we need, but then we don't do anything in order for those changes to happen. So I want to thank you, Chief, publicly for your willingness to sit down with us. I really appreciated that.
Just strong leadership all around. Chief, talk a little bit briefly. So Lauren did discuss some different programs and some different interactions that the police have with this, particularly our African American community. Talk a little bit about some of the programs and initiatives that are in place.
Okay. And Lauren, I would echo that a lot of times, a lot of things are going on in our community that people just don't know about.
That's true.
And I would say that it's obviously pertinent to the Black community, but it's pertinent to the community at large. It's we are so disengaged from our government and what's going on. But it's like what I'm about to go through, Logan, when you talk about that and I tell people about that, it's like, I never knew that. I didn't know that the police do that. But we've been involved in a lot of programs for a very long time. Obviously, some of the more high profile programs are things we do over the holiday periods, like Operation Thanksgiving and Operation Santa. And all those are attempts to try to help families in need that may not be able to have the holiday meal that so many Americans traditionally have, or may not be able to have the type of Christmas or the type of celebration with gifts for kids and things like that they don't have. And a lot of that comes from the community. People call in and make suggestions, and that's been a program that obviously brings a lot of joy to a lot of people, but it only touches so many families a year. But we have that. Of course, we had the DARE programs. Officers are with our youth in a sense, pretty much all the way to the junior college years. We have DARE officers, and those programs start in the elementary schools. We have school resource officers in the junior highs, and we have school resource officers in the high school. And then we even have officers that are committed to Clark State. So in the 2-year programs that we have here. And some of the offshoots from that program include, I think we mentioned earlier, Safety City, which is something they do with children. They run it throughout the summer. Of course, COVID's kind of put a big hamper on all these things, but we'll get back to it.
Sure.
And Safety City runs throughout the summer, and that teaches kids about all kinds of different safety issues and school bus safety and bicycle safety, stranger danger, all the things we think about. And that's been a very popular program. I mean, adults that I meet, have said, I went through Safety City, right? So many Springfielders know our DARE officers because they had them, new officers that come in, they see the DARE officer, go, I had them as my DARE teacher. So we have those programs. We have the Citizens Police Academy, which when we talk about engagement, there is so much that goes into policing. And even though it's only 10 to 12 weeks long, depending on what our topics are, it's a chance for citizens to kind of see what goes into policing, what the services are that are available, who the people are that are in all these different programs. And it's also a forum for citizens to talk about what their concerns are in their community. it's a learning process from both sides, from both the staff that's presenting and for folks that are presenting back to us. There's also options to do ride-alongs and just all these different things. And those develop long-lasting relationships. We have an organization that came off of that, which is the Citizens Police Academy Alumni Association. And they're an active group that meets monthly, and they do this all on their own because they were so, they kind of got invigorated by what they saw in the Citizens Police Academy that they wanted to continue to do that. And they do a lot of service to the community and some of the programs that we have. We also have bicycle safety, which we do a bike camp that we do in the summers. We've had law camps in the past to kind of get with kids and talk about police issues on a level for kids and let them meet officers and do a little bit of that mentoring. We have a strong relationship with the Law Enforcement Torch Run, which of course helps Special Olympics. One of our officers, one of our detectives, is actually the regional coordinator for that. Nice. And has been invited. She went to the National Olympics in Seattle, and she's been invited to go. Their next one, I believe, is somewhere. Well, I think it was in Russia. I'm not sure where it is now, but and that kind of speaks to how so many officers are involved in their own projects and their own community things. In addition to this, because if you truly are committed to service, then you've got a service heart and a service mind, and you're always looking for ways to get involved, outside of that. Those are a few, but I think also just our obligation. It's an obligation, but it's also an honor. But to stay involved with things like just the forum that we're doing today, to just get a chance to get out. We have such a new advantage with social media and a way to reach out to people that maybe they can't watch it right now, but they can always tune into a podcast later and kind of see what's going on. And it obviously makes an impact because I get emails every day from people that have watched something or seen something and have asked a question and sent questions about it. So I think that's the biggest thing. The whole idea in these programs is helping the community, but also trying to bridge that gap and make those relationships. The biggest place those relationships are made, again, is on the street, person to person.
Absolutely.
I've been in community policing. Springfield Police Division has adopted community policing as its philosophy since I came on in the 90s. But when I'm asked myself, and I ran that community unit for several years as a sergeant, but when I'm asked myself, well, what really is community policing? To me, what measures that we've succeeded or that I've succeeded in building a relationship with somebody is that when they look me in the eyes and they see me outside of this job without my uniform on, going to Myers or all the different things that I have to do during the day, they see me and they go, hey, Lee, or Chief Graf, or whatever they want to say, but they recognize me as a person. And of course I recognize them because we developed that relationship, but a lot of times it's hard to get past the uniform, all the bells and whistles and all the things that we do. And when we get to know each other on a one-on-one basis, then it's hard to disrespect each other when you know each other, right? And it's the same thing for children. If children know an officer, then oftentimes that officer can just say a word to that child. If maybe that child's about to get themselves into a situation, and that child might just take that advice and stay out of it. And on the same token, that child knows that officer. And if something's going on in their life where maybe the officer could intercede or help, or even just give an encouraging word, that they're not afraid to approach that officer and tell them, hey, this is what's going on for me. Can you help me? Or, hey, I just want to tell you this. So you're absolutely right. I mean, it all starts with people. And the hardest thing is it's a busy job. Springfield Police Division fields about 55,000 calls for service a year and stretched out over basically 90 some patrol officers. And so they're often call to call to call to call to call. And that's the hardest thing, is carving out that time where you just have, say, the officer on the beat. We would love to do that, but it's just a matter of doing that versus, but also meeting our obligation. When someone picks up the phone and calls for help, that we're there and we're on the way. So we're continuing to work on that, but I would just say again, we try to be as accessible as possible. And if anybody has any questions today that you didn't think about, or you didn't feel you had a chance, our email's right there. You go online on our website for the city of Springfield, you go to the police division and it says Lee Graf, and it has an email. That's my email. I get it. I see it. I answer all my emails. Sometimes it takes me a couple days. Don't hold me, but I answer all the emails. Same thing. People call in, people post things on Facebook, etc. So,
Well, Chief, I appreciate your response. I think you and Lauren were both totally correct in saying that there are so many different initiatives and opportunities that a lot of people just don't know about.
Mhm.
So I thank you both for your time and your
Thank you.
honesty and for joining us today. I wanted to kind of conclude with closing remarks. So Lauren, I'll start with you if you had any parting words you wanted to say.
Yeah, so I would just say, let's continue to push forward. We don't want to, even though obviously our history is very important to know, at the same time, we can't live there. We can't dwell there. We have to continue to move forward and say, how do we get better? And so I'm appreciative of what has already taken place. Some of the things that have already, the marches, the protests and things like that here in Springfield that have been peaceful. But it's not enough to march. We have to, at some point, put in the work. And so I'm appreciative of, where our city is. Also, this opportunity to have a town hall. I was grateful that our city manager gave me the go ahead to organize this event. So I hope to see you guys there. Please feel free to submit your question and your comment. Like I said, you can, contact us through Instagram at Leaders of Change Springfield, and then Leaders of Change on Facebook, and leadersofchange@yahoo.com. You can email us there. So please feel free. I look forward to hearing what everyone has to say, and I look forward to the town hall. I think this is a good thing. I think it'll definitely spark probably some more conversation and hopefully also some action. So thank you. Thank you for having me.
Very good. Thanks, Lauren. Chief, closing remarks.
Just first of all, thank you. Lauren, thank you for being
Absolutely.
here today. And Logan, as always, doing an excellent job as our moderator. We're committed to change. And law enforcement changes all the time, like everything else. As our society changes, law enforcement changes too. I would echo that we need to remember our history, and we need to remember that our history has not always been good, whether it's as law enforcement or as a nation. But we have the ability to always make things better.
Absolutely.
We are in a nation that, as much as I hear it sometimes taken for granted, we are a nation of laws.
Mhm.
And we are a nation that ultimately is bound and held by the Constitution and its rights. I've traveled the world. I've been in some countries where that's not so much the case. Now, that's not to compare and say, well, if it's bad there, then this is okay here. No, it's not. It's always a work in progress, and we always want to do better. And I would just tell the folks at home that I'm committed to that. But I can also say that the men and women that I talk to every day that serve in uniform for the city of Springfield are committed to that as well. So we're going to continue to serve the public, and we always want to do it better. And so I just want to tell folks that I understand what's going on, but understand that we hear you, and we are continuing to work on that daily.
Very good. Well, we've talked about a lot today, guys, from community to policing, to things that we're seeing across the nation, to town halls. So thank you all so much for joining us. Our next podcast will be this Friday at 10 a.m., A Word with the City Manager. So tune in then. Otherwise, have a great rest of your afternoon. Bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.